way. You know, the most interesting thing that I reckon he spoke about last week was he talks about the future of one thing that actually like plucked a chord a little bit. You know, he said, "I'm sorry to tell everyone this, but it may be very possible or very likely that we will be the last generation to die." And everyone was like, "What?" And he explained it, and he said that with modern advances in neurotechnology, being able to program or more map out the human like neural web, I suppose you would call it, like map the brain completely, map everything that's going on in the brain. They may be able to get to a point when they can program download your consciousness onto a computer, essentially. And to the point where you'll be able to load someone's consciousness, someone who's been long dead, and be able to have a conversation with them, because when you load them up, all of their memories are in there, all of their social connections, everything's still programmed into them. They're probably not able to take on any new content, but you know what, you are now. That will be completely mapped, and you'll be able to have a conversation to the capacity that you are able to now.
Basically, we're ages from this technology, but he uses the Human Genome Project as an example of how technology, well, in this case, genetics, right? We've mapped the human genome. So we've looked at the DNA strand, the chromosomes of a human being, and we're slowly mapping out all the sequences, all the gene sequences that make a human. We're uncovering the blueprint of how to make a human, so to speak. And we're to the point where we're pretty much there, you know. There's a few genes and there's a few pockets here and there missing or that require a lot more research. But as far as what goes into the DNA strand of a human, and I'm assuming that would make understanding other life forms, you know. But that's gotten to a point where you could theoretically have all the information that is like how to build a Travis or how to build a Josh on a disc, right? And that would have all the information, so you could plug that into a computer, a cloning machine.
Mine was like a 2-disc box set.
What a fascinating...
You know what though? Like with advancing cloning, if you're able to clone humans, and I'm sure they'll be able to 100 years from now, I'm sure there'll be no problem.
There's a next step,
and if you're also able to program the consciousness, future generations.
But that's a big step. That's what I think that what he wanted to impose was that there's a huge step between. So I could theoretically put in this disc that has a person, all their genome on it, right? So you put in the disc, I make a clone, right? And you have the exact genetic clone of that person, that copy. But they don't have any of the memories, any of the thoughts, any of the consciousness, any of the personality of that person, because that is the neural net of the brain. That is not in your genes, right? That comes from you experiencing the world, right? And developing your brain. So for that to happen, for to be able to copy your consciousness, so now we're talking to synthesize consciousness. So to make a digital copy of someone's consciousness, or I suppose you could look at the other side of it, to create a robotic consciousness, like artificial intelligence, you need to understand 100%, well, we'll say the human brain, yeah, as an example, 100, because the human brain's made up of 100 billion neurons. So that's 100 billion sensors that connect to each other. And they're all firing off in their complex ways, right? And we know a lot about the brain. We know a lot about different parts of the brain for different parts of thought. We kind of understanding how memories are formed, how dreams are kind of formed, how visions, everything, how the brain works. We're getting a firm understanding. And if you could record someone's brain, which you can do now, he actually one of the most impressive things he talked about was a study that has been done on mice. Basically, they recorded a mouse's memory. So they put electrodes on a mouse's brain and they gave it a simple task, right? Of learning how to drink water from a special drip. So they'll put these electrodes on and it record what the brain's doing, the electromagnetic frequencies of this mouse's brain while it was performing these tasks, right? So they recorded that, kept it on file, and they left the mouse alone. For a mouse has a short-term memory, so they left the mouse alone to the point where it would have forgotten these specific skills of how to drink from this water bottle. Then what they did was they put the electrodes back on and they replayed the memory.
Well,
And
so
then-
I'll,
and the
I'll
mouse-
just clarify, like what they did was they hooked it up to the section of the brain, the hippocampus, which is the section of the brain where memory is stored in mice, obviously. So so what they did was so they record what was happening when he initially learnt that task,
and then played it back. And when it was
on the
played
same
back,
spot.
obviously through the hippocampus, then through the neurosystem, the mouse was able to perform these tasks
Immediately knew it again. A memory that was lost, being reprogrammed back into the mind.
So obviously a mouse is a lot less complex than a human brain. A mouse's brain is a lot less.
So, but so they're going to try to work with this experiment and eventually start testing on chimpanzees, and then in the short term, then there'll be Alzheimer's patients, people with short-term memory loss, and be able to essentially eliminate memory loss altogether. Which is massive.
So if you think of that, if you can find a way to successfully record someone's thoughts, someone's memories, someone's emotions, right, and you have that on file, then that is you. As if you ask the big question, who are you? It is not. I mean, the individual cells in your body get reproduced all the time. You know, you could cut off a hand, and I mean, it's not really a part of you. A sense that. The essence of you comes from your personality, your consciousness, right? That is what makes you you. If you were a brain dead, that you could argue that it's not really you, you know? If you took...
If hypothetically, I don't know if you went into it, but if you were to record someone's consciousness, is there any capacity for new input or retention of information, or is it simply as it was when recorded?
Well, it'd have to be as is as recorded. You can't... I think if you were to... Okay.
There's no self-learning systems that could be created.
Well, if there was, that's a whole different kettle of fish. It depends. Who knows where the technology would go.
If that was the case, who was to say you couldn't take from other people's...
Yeah.
Or just say you take my...
True. If you still imagine everyone's consciousness was stored onto one database, and then you made this one clone and put it all in there.
You'd be the most wise person.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would be. And it's not. It's not physically impossible. You know, it's not physically impossible. That's what he was saying. So you could have this one disc. You know, you start disc 1 would be how to build a clone of you, and then disc 2 would be your consciousness. So you could put that. And I say a disc because he used that example, but he also used the example. You could put it on a laser beam. You know, you could use a radio wave and transmit your consciousness, transmit all your personalities, He
was talking about long traveling through space, right? They say that it would take something ridiculous like 4 million years to get to the closest star system to Alpha Centauri.
Well, it depends. Like the closest star, Alpha Centauri,
based on modern day space travel techniques. But that's what they're saying. If you were able to program consciousness onto like a laser beam, you could hypothetically beam consciousness out to the far reaches of outer space, and that's space travel right there in a way, I suppose.
I suppose.
But there's no.
Yeah, I know, but I suppose we're jumping ahead. I mean, I suppose the more immediate ramifications that it would have, I think we'd get to cloning a human on Earth before we got to that level where we try to beam that consciousness out.
For sure. It's just I get tangled up in his ideas.
Yeah, the primary, I suppose,
objective.
No, the primary objective, I suppose, would be to extend life. And if you could reboot a system, just say I'm an old man getting frail and all that, but I've had these electrodes recording my consciousness, right? Kept on recording ever since I started it. Ideally, you'd want it from the day you were born. You'd want your consciousness to be recorded, right? And then when you die, they could boot up a system, make a new version of you, right? And then put that chip in, or put that boot your consciousness back into it. If you're living again, you get to theoretically again. So
backed up your brain on iCloud.
Yeah, exactly.
Make sure you are deleting history that you don't want.
Josh, have you backed up your brain this week?
Oh man, I'm on the cloud again.
Man.
You know what though? So
I keep accepting cookies and I hate it.
So think about that, right? So say they've got your DNA, they can clone you as. You could say to them, you know what? I want my 25-year-old body back. You know, when you're an old man, They could program your consciousness now of an old man back into your 25-year-old body, therefore eliminating death.
This is all possible.
So, as he said, this is possible within the next few generations. Therefore, we could be one of the last generations to actually die. Because future generations will be able to simply reprogram their consciousness onto a brand new vehicle, a brand new body, and with their mind just programmed back into a new vehicle, a fresh body.
Because that's all you are. You are the culmination of all your thoughts, feelings, and memories. That's who you identify as. Now, the problem with death is that we have no way of storing all that, you know? It's either in the brain or it's nowhere. If you can take it out of the brain and put it on a disc, then we have eternal life. Like, that's basically...
Doesn't that scare you, though, to think that, all right, 2 generations from now, they're going to look back
I wouldn't say 2 generations. I'd say...
You know. Okay, hypothetically. We'll say 100 years from now, right? Could be a few generations. That's what he said. It could be possible that it's within a few generations.
Oh, it'd be mighty impressive. Yeah.
Mighty impressive, but if it was the case, say even if it's 1,000 years from now, they're still going to be able to look back and say, oh my God, those people back then, they only had a finite life. They knew
how scary it would have been knowing that they were going to die.
They're aware they only had, if they're lucky, 100 years to live, and they had to squeeze everything into that one life. What kind of a life would that have been if you knew that you were going to die? How did they do it? Which is kind of scary to think that we do. We have this finite life that we have to make the most of it. How unfortunate would we say? They have the freedom. Future generations have the freedom to be able to know that this ride's going on forever. I can pace it out. I can do whatever I want, because at the end of this body's life, what's in here gets to live on in a fresh, new, younger body. Man,
but imagine how intelligent you could become if you could
that's the thing. If
go to a really young body and then just live that life out again.
Well, that's through the basic model of the brain, how it would work. Yeah, you have to go through another lifetime to have another lifetime of experiences. But if you have this technology of being able to, so if this technology was viable, then obviously we have such an amazing knowledge of how the human brain works. Well, we could enhance that. You could say, okay, I'm gonna program a photographic memory to myself, or I'm gonna program every time I read something. Oh yeah, I suppose a photographic memory, anything. Your powers of deduction can be tenfold. Your powers of logic, you can just increase them. You want to be more right brain, you can switch that on. You want to be more left brain, I can be more artistic. I can enhance my visual cortex, so I could see. You could. I suppose the possibilities are endless for what you could do.